She taught 30 kids every day with a smile on her face. But what no one ever saw was the woman sitting alone in her car at night, clutching a stack of papers, tears silently falling. Not because she was weak, but because she cared more than anyone ever realized. She showed up day after day, not for the paycheck, not for recognition, but for the kids who needed her most. If a teacher like that ever changed your life, even just a little, hit that subscribe button. Let's honor them together, one story at a time. Every morning at exactly 7:15 a.m., Room 12 lit up with soft sunlight seeping through old window blinds. Desks stood neatly in rows. Markers were lined up just so, and on the corner of the whiteboard, a simple message always awaited the students. You are seen. You are loved. You are enough. Ms. Carter wrote it in purple ink, her favorite color, the same one she wore on her scarf every Monday. To her fifth graders, Ms. Carter was the ever-steady, always smiling teacher with warm eyes and the ability to make fractions seem like magic. They never knew that behind her gentle voice was a heart stretched thin by grief, by bills, by the weight of 30 children's futures she carried like bricks in her backpack. She didn't want them to know. What they also didn't see was the night before, when she sat alone in her car for 20 minutes after school had ended. The parking lot was empty. The papers she had to grade were still in the back seat. She cried quietly so no one could hear, because her landlord had sent a notice about a rent increase, because one of her students had called her Mom that day, and it broke her, because she hadn't spoken to her own family in months. But tomorrow she would still show up. She always did. Teaching, she once whispered to a friend, is the only job where you can feel like you're drowning and still smile so your kids never know the storm you're hiding. Her smile wasn't fake, it was brave. And every time she stepped into room 12, she wasn't just entering a classroom. She was entering a battlefield of broken homes, broken systems, and broken spirits, and fighting to piece something whole together with nothing but books, chalk, and love. What if I told you this story isn't just about Miss Carter? What if this story is about 1,000 teachers? Maybe even yours. So before you scroll, before you forget, take a moment. Look a little deeper. Because the life of a teacher is filled with silent sacrifices you may never see, but they're real. And today, we tell the story they're too tired to tell for themselves. They say teaching is a noble profession. What they don't say is how often it feels like being noble means being invisible. Behind every lesson plan, every good morning at the door, every handmade bulletin board decorated with paper apples and positive affirmations, there is a weight that no one talks about. There's the burden of finances. Miss Carter made $46,000 a year before taxes. Out of that, she spent nearly $2,000 annually of her own money buying crayons, binders, glue sticks, and even winter jackets for students who showed up in December wearing only a t-shirt. There was no reimbursement, no applause, no headline. Just a quiet trip to Walmart after school, basket full, credit card maxed. There's the burden of expectation. Parents want their child to excel. Administrators want test scores to climb. The state wants compliance. Society wants results. And if a student fails, somehow, it's the teacher's fault. Not the hunger the child hides. Not the trauma they carry like a scar. Not the brokenness at home. Just the teacher. We are expected to be educators, counselors, parents, nurses, referees, tech support, and miracle workers, one teacher wrote in her anonymous blog. And we do it, we really do. But at night, when the world is quiet, the weight sinks in. There's the burden of emotional attachment. When a student hugs you tighter than usual and whispers, "I don't want to go home today," you carry that home with you. You wonder, you worry, you lose sleep. You don't just teach math or reading. You learn 30 different stories. You memorize who gets anxious during storms, who hasn't eaten since yesterday, who flinches when you raise your voice. It's not a curriculum. It's a calling. And yet teachers keep going. They show up the next morning with new worksheets, new hope, and that same tired smile that hides so much. Because when you're a teacher, even when you're drained, you pour into others. Even when your voice trembles, you still read out loud. Even when you feel forgotten, you refuse to forget the ones in your care. This is the invisible burden. It doesn't make the news. It doesn't trend on TikTok. But it's carried in every classroom, every hallway, every weary step of those who choose to love beyond the lesson. His name was Jalen. He sat in the second row, third seat from the left, always with his hoodie up, sleeves covering his hands, eyes down. He was the kind of kid teachers are warned about, the one who won't engage, the one with the behavior record, the one who just doesn't care. But Miss Carter never believed in those labels. She believed in people. The first time she called on him to read, he stared at his desk for 30 full seconds. The silence was deafening. The other kids shifted uncomfortably. Ms. Carter smiled gently and said, "That's okay, Jalen. You can try again tomorrow." He never did. Weeks passed. Jalen came to class. He didn't disrupt. He didn't participate. He didn't smile. One Friday afternoon, she left a sticky note on his desk. It read, "Jalen, I see how hard you try. Thank you for showing up." He didn't respond. Monday came. He showed up again. Another note. "You matter here." By week 4, Jalen had a drawer full of these notes, all tucked inside his math book like they were secret treasure. Still, he said nothing, never smiled, never raised his hand. But one cold November morning, he didn't show up. One day turned into 3, then 5, then 2 weeks. No word, no call, just an empty chair. And that hurt in a way no training manual ever prepares you for. Because when a child goes missing from your classroom, it's not just a name on a list, it's a piece of your heart walking into silence. Then, one Monday, he walked in slimmer, quieter, if that was even possible. His hoodie was up, but his eyes, they looked like someone had turned off the lights inside. After class, he waited until every other student had left. He walked up slowly and handed Miss Carter a folded piece of paper. Then he left. No words. She opened it. It was messy, written in pencil, lightly smudged. "My mom died 3 weeks ago. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to talk. I kept your notes. I read them at night. You're the only one who sees me. Thank you for not giving up." Miss Carter sat down at her desk and wept, not in silence, not in secret. For the first time in years, she let herself feel the weight of it all, of the invisible, tireless, thankless work that sometimes, just sometimes, finds its way back to you. The next day, Jalen read a paragraph aloud in class. It wasn't perfect, but when he finished, Miss Carter clapped softly. And for the first time, Jalen smiled. It wasn't wide. It wasn't long. But it was real. And it said more than any words ever could. That smile, she'd say years later, was my raise, my award, my reason. What no one tells you about teaching is this. Sometimes, your greatest impact won't show up on a test score or a report card. It will show up in a quiet moment, in a folded note, or in the way a child finally lifts their head and meets your eyes with hope. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's enough to keep going. There's a story people rarely hear. It's not about the bad students or the long hours. It's about the moments when teaching truly hurts. Ms. Carter lost her mother during testing week. Her mom had been battling cancer quietly. She'd visit after school, bring soup, hold her hand, whisper prayers. Then one Friday evening the hospital called, "You should come now." By the time Miss Carter arrived, her mother was already gone. She sat in her car that night, in the dark, and the only sound was the soft hum of the engine and her own ragged breathing. She cried until her cheeks stung. Then she opened her glove compartment, pulled out a stack of graded spelling tests, and started reviewing them under the dim dome light. "Why?" Because Monday was the state assessment, and Room 12 had been preparing for months. She didn't want to let them down. She didn't want Jalen to come back and find her gone too. So on Monday morning, she stood in front of her class in a soft gray cardigan her mom had once given her. She said, "You've got this," with the same steady voice. She smiled, and no one knew that her world had cracked open just 2 days before. That's what most people never see. The teacher who stays up grading papers through a divorce, the one who reads Charlotte's Web to 3rd graders while silently battling depression, the one who keeps the class calm during a lockdown drill while texting their own child to make sure they're safe too. Miss Carter once had a student bring a pocket knife to school. It wasn't meant to hurt anyone. The child was scared, living in a violent household, and thought he needed protection. The school removed him. But Miss Carter, she cried for days. She kept wondering, what did I miss? What else is he carrying that I didn't see? Every child carries something, and so does every teacher. But the thing about teaching is, no matter how tired you are, no matter how broken you feel inside, the moment that bell rings, something inside you straightens. You stand tall, even when your world is falling apart. Because for that hour, for that lesson, you are someone's anchor. You are their one place of safety. You are the reason they come to school at all. I've taught with a fever. I've taught with a broken heart. I've taught the morning after losing a friend, Miss Carter once said. But the hardest days are the ones when I smile so my students don't see the storm I'm in. There's a quiet, almost holy sacrifice that happens in classrooms every day. It's not grand or showy. It doesn't get viral posts or magazine features. But it's real. It's the teacher who buys birthday cupcakes for the child who never gets one. The teacher who drives across town to attend a student's piano recital on her only day off. The teacher who stays after school until sunset because a student just needed to talk. And yes, sometimes it hurts. Because teaching isn't just about pouring knowledge into minds. It's about bleeding love into lives, even when there's barely enough left for yourself. Years passed. The desks changed. The faces changed. But Room 12 remained. And so did Ms. Carter. She didn't remember every test score, but she remembered voices. Like the one from the hallway, a few years after Jalen left her class. "Miss Carter," a deep voice called. She turned and for a moment didn't recognize him. Tall, confident, holding a laptop bag, dressed like he belonged in an office. But then he smiled, that half smile. "Jalen, college?" she asked, stunned. "Graduated last month," he said. "Education major." She covered her mouth. Tears welled. "I'm student, teaching at a middle school now," he continued. "Room smells like crayons and coffee. Reminds me of you." And just like that, everything she ever doubted melted away. You see, most teachers never get closure. No applause. No grand thank you. Their impact isn't a moment. It's a ripple. Sometimes it shows up in a Facebook message at 2 a.m. "Hey, Miss Carter, I just wanted to say thanks. You were the only adult who made me feel safe at 13. Sometimes it's a wedding invitation in the mail from a former student who once struggled with reading. Sometimes it's overhearing a child say to another, "You matter, you're enough." Words they once read, handwritten in purple ink on their desk. Most of the time, you never know. You teach, you plant, you water, you walk away. And you trust the seeds you sow will bloom someday, even if you never see the garden. "I used to wonder if I was making a difference," Ms. Carter once said. "Now I know every time a kid lifts their head, every time they try again, every time they believe they can reach there, it's always been there." The world is quick to forget teachers, but students never do. Because long after the classroom fades, long after the homework and hall passes and test scores are forgotten, what remains is the way you made them feel. Safe, seen, valued. That's the legacy. Not chalkboards, not worksheets, but the quiet echo of love that lasts long after the last bell rings. You won't find her name in history books. There's no statue in front of the school, no banner with her face in Times Square. But Ms. Carter changed lives. Not with grand speeches, not with fame, with consistency, with compassion, with quiet love repeated every day. That's the thing about teachers. They are the architects of the future, and yet they rarely see the finished blueprint. They light candles in the lives of children, one by one, even if they never get to feel the warmth themselves. There's a quote that says, "A teacher affects eternity. They can never tell where their influence stops." It's true. Every kind doctor who once had a teacher stay after school to explain fractions. Every brave firefighter who learned what courage looked like from a 5th-grade science teacher. Every single parent who remembers the one teacher who didn't give up on them when everyone else did. The world celebrates CEOs and inventors and presidents. But behind each of them, there was a teacher. Someone who stayed late, who brought snacks, who said, "I believe in you," long before anyone else did. But here's the hard part. Most of the time, teachers walk through life without ever hearing those words back. They retire quietly, move away, pass on. And we realize, sometimes too late, just how much they meant. Maybe that's why Teacher Appreciation Day matters. Not because we owe them a gift, but because we owe them recognition. Because buried behind every alphabet chart and reading log is a human soul who has given more than they've ever received. And in that giving, they've made the world better. Not louder, not flashier, but better. One child, one smile, one folded note at a time. Some heroes wear uniforms. Others carry chalk dust on their sleeves and dried tears behind their smiles. They don't ask to be noticed. But today, we see them. We see you, Ms. Carter. We see every hallway walked, every book read aloud with love, every lunch skipped to comfort a crying child. And maybe, just maybe, this world turns a little more gently because teachers like you chose to care when no one was watching. Before you scroll to the next video, before this story becomes just another tab you closed, let me ask you something. Who was your Miss Carter? Maybe it was the 3rd-grade teacher who stayed with you during recess when your parents were fighting at home. Maybe it was the high school English teacher who said, "You're more than your mistakes." Maybe it was the choir director who made you believe your voice mattered. Or the math teacher who never let you give up no matter how many times you failed that quiz. Their names may fade, but the way they made you feel, that stays. And if you're watching this right now, chances are you're here because someone once believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself. So here's what you can do. Right now, text them, message them, tag them. If they're still here, tell them what they meant to you. Because sometimes, all it takes is one message to remind them. You mattered, you still do. And if they're no longer here, say a prayer, light a candle, or simply whisper, "Thank you." Because love like that doesn't vanish, it lives in who we've become. Teachers don't always get to see the seeds they plant become forests. But we are the trees, and we carry their legacy in every breath. This video is more than just a tribute. It's a reminder that in a world chasing fame, wealth, and recognition, there are still quiet heroes who choose to build lives instead of brands, who choose to give without applause, who show up day after day because they believe every child is worth the fight. And today, we honor them. Share this video, not for the views, not for the likes, but because maybe, just maybe, a teacher out there needs to hear this right now. Maybe they're wondering if it's still worth it. Maybe they're thinking about quitting. Maybe they've forgotten just how powerful they are. Let this video be your way of saying, "You didn't teach me for nothing. I remember. I'm better because of you." So if you've ever had a teacher who made a difference, don't wait. Say it now. Say it loud. and let them know they changed your life.